Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode on the Creativity channel. And today I've got a special guest called Will Ray, who is an illustrator, muralist, and signwriter, amongst other things. And so, welcome, Will. Welcome onto the channel. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom today with me.
That's all right. Yeah, it's nice to chat to you. Nice to be here. But yeah,
Fantastic. Lovely. So, could you introduce yourself in a few brief sentences for people who've not heard of you or who you are, and for me as well, so I can remind myself again?
yeah. So my name's Will. I work creatively under the name Willustration. I am a mural artist, sign painter, illustrator, anything really creative that can kind of keep my career going. So, but
Hmm.
mainly do give the overarching term of visual artist, but that specializes in murals, signs, and digital illustration. And
Fantastic.
yeah, I was based in Sheffield, and now I'm based in London, but I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit more.
Yeah,
But
yeah, we'll get
yeah,
to that for sure. So, you're a person wearing many hats, which is also a
yeah,
good attribute to have.
yeah,
Great. So, I guess going back in time, back to childhood, did you always consider yourself a creative person? Like, how was that journey for you, discovering your sort of inner artist and knowing, whether that's a path you wanted to go down, a creative route?
yeah. I've always been passionate about how things work and how things are made. So initially, my passions were maybe more kind of design and sort of
Mm.
technical. But and also my dad studied product design at university, so I grew up
Oh.
with his sort of he wasn't drawing them for illustrative purposes, but he would draw things out, plan things. He was obviously building things. He's restoring a camper van now.
Oh, wow.
So I grew up around all this kind of tinkering, and I think that it definitely rubbed off on me. Equally, my mum's a primary school teacher, so there's a creative aspect to that.
Mm.
So from the get-go, my parents were very, very creative. Even though it's engineering and teaching, it was kind of interdispersible. And growing up, yeah, I definitely had a huge passion in creative projects. I found that when I was studying at school and university and sixth form and all these things, like I spent as much time as possible in the creative workshops just because I enjoyed that so much. I've always gravitated towards creating things and making things, and I really, really think that it's something that I couldn't not do full
Hmm.
time.
Mm.
Yeah, I thought about in life doing different things, and to start with, it takes a while to earn money out of this, but to start with, you can get immediate money from the engineering route, but
Mm.
you maybe give up part of your creativity. So, um, I've lived a lifetime. I've lived my life really, really enjoying and gravitating towards being creative, and
Mm.
that's why I'm here today, and I'm making a living out of it now. But it took a good while to get it to really pay rent and
Mm.
maybe a pension and maybe future family and all that stuff.
Hmm.
It took a little while, but I think it was the passion that has allowed me to be here now.
Yeah. And you can definitely see that passion through all the different projects that you're currently doing and the projects you've already completed. And your CV is literally bursting with all sorts of creative ideas and projects that you've already done. And yeah, and hopefully that passion that you have will last a lifetime, which is fantastic. And I think that's the hope of many creative people. And like you say, I think with a creative person, it's quite difficult, isn't it? Because you're sort of choosing that fine line between what pays and what you love doing sometimes, and it's a very fine, difficult line to tread. But you seem to be doing it fantastically, and like you say, good things take time as well. And so I think
Mhm.
that's really interesting that you mentioned that as well. Okay, so I think this is a bit of a wider question now. So, um, what is your definition of creativity? What does creativity mean to you?
I think that creativity is the immediate thing that comes to mind is the word inspired. I think
Mm,
creativity and inspiration like go hand in hand as words and as beliefs and as systems. I think it's something that allows you to communicate. I
mm-hmm,
think creativity is a way of people communicating using means other than verbal, but equally verbal and singing and all these things. Um, but yeah, I think creativity is basically something that allows a person to communicate an inner feeling or
mm,
um, a mood.
mm-hmm.
It's such a broad question, and it's
Yeah.
quite a tricky one to really pin down.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, creativity is something that breaks boundaries in terms of maybe conventions. I think being
Mm,
creative is finding another, like a creative solution to something is the solution that no one else has thought of.
mm-hmm.
So I think that
Yeah.
creativity is all of those things I just said wrapped up into one.
Yeah, it's so many things, isn't it? And it's different things to different people. So that's why, I like to ask this question to everyone that comes on because everyone's just going to give a different answer to it. And I suppose everyone has their own different relationship to it as well. Because it's not just, drawing and painting. And that's like sort of, I suppose, the stereotype of what a person thinks of when they think of creative things. But it's so much more than that. Like you say, it's problem solving, being inspired, different ways of communicating with people, all those things are creative, even going out
Mm,
for a walk and just being inspired by the landscape around you, that can be, an act of creativity in itself as
yeah,
well. Yeah.
completely. I think you just mentioned that creativity isn't just drawing and painting.
Mm.
And I think that's something that I want to mention early on because I studied illustration and we might talk about this later, but
Yeah,
the
yeah.
term illustration is so like badly defined in terms of what it is because people think it's just drawings in books. Like an
Mm.
illustrator is someone who people think it's someone who draws pictures for um, well-known stories or things like that, like
Yeah.
Spike Milligan and all these people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And actually, being an illustrator or studying illustration opens so many different doors. And I've managed
Mm.
to capitalize on all these different doors. And
Yeah.
I have never done, I mean, I did at university, but I've never done a commissioned, I don't think I have. I've done a commissioned like brochure cover, but
Mm.
I've never done like a book or illustrations in a book. And I'm actively at the minute pursuing different ventures, which I'm enjoying. So
Hmm.
yeah, just in terms of the statement illustration, I don't think that's particularly defined well. Same as
Yeah.
creativity, it's like it depends how you want to take it.
Hmm. Definitely. I agree with you totally. I suppose that's another stereotype of illustration, really, is that you create illustrations for books, whether it's
Mhm.
children's books or graphic novels or what have you. That I suppose that's where you see it the most. But I suppose that's not necessarily true because it depends everywhere where you look. There is creativity and illustration. It's just I think sometimes it just blends in with the surrounding, landscape of where you are. Whether you are at a train station and there are posters with illustration on there, or whether you are, in a heritage place of heritage in the town centre and you see these wonderful murals, on the walls around you. And, sometimes, you do take that for granted, but the people that don't, they stop and they look and they appreciate it. And it's part of their day that they, saw something colourful on a wall and it might affect their whole day from that point onwards. So I think, yeah, I think definitely creativity is being open-minded, and I think you've definitely with your career and how you've definitely started it. It's just exciting to see the areas that you're pushing your creativity to and pushing the boundaries of illustration and where that can go for you. I'm excited to see more of it, really. Yeah, great.
Yeah, me too. Like, I've got to get the work done. But yeah, I'm excited to see what's coming next. I don't know.
Hmm,
We'll see. But
wait
yeah,
and
it's
see.
been very fun so far.
Good.
But not without its stresses. But
Yeah,
it's what it is.
definitely. But I suppose the positives weigh out the negatives. There's more
Yeah,
positives than
completely,
negatives.
completely. I think I'm at the end of a battle with the career, or not the end.
Mm,
I've just started it, but I'm definitely feeling like I made the right decision now.
mm,
But yeah, I wouldn't say that was the case for my whole initial career because I'm 6 years now. This is my sixth year, so I'm 6 years into this. So if I was going to have learned some lessons and sort of stopped doing what I was doing, I would have done that by now. So
mm.
I think it's time to just get my head down, crack on, and keep posting and keep creating.
Fantastic. Yeah, very wise.
Yeah.
I think it's like that with starting anything really, though. I suppose there's this sort of initial hump that you have to get over of sort of that difficulty, initial difficulty of starting something. But if you persist at it and get over that, I suppose it's a bit smoother going from there, although there are always ups and downs on the
Yeah,
journey.
completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you briefly mentioned that about the beginnings, of your creativity and studying illustration. And so I actually want to ask you about art school, art university, and how did that sort of influence you as a person? And I guess what I'm trying to get at with this question is, did you find it beneficial going to university to actually study? And sort
Yeah.
of what positives you got out of that?
Yeah. So I actually went straight from, so I'm going to sort of skip out secondary and sixth form, but I did specialize in fine art, product design, and English language. So immediately at my sixth form kind of time, I was studying the most creative options that I could think of, really. So I took those um, grades, which were pretty good, and then I actually enrolled on a product design course in Manchester,
Mm,
which ended up not being the correct choice, as I spoke about before, like the kind of engineering
yeah.
thought of maybe that being more safe in terms of a
Hmm.
career and a future. But engineering based, maths based, we were designing like wheelchair handles and car parts. And I thought,
Mm,
oh, I want to be, if I'm doing design, I want to be doing lighting, furniture, Bluetooth backpacks you take to festivals and all these things.
hmm.
And I felt like I wasn't being able to express my creative voice in that course. And
Hmm.
also, I grew up in a little tiny village and I went to a small town school. And then I went at the age of 18 to Manchester to study a course I wasn't really that passionate about. And it was all just a concoction of basically a bit of a life lesson and probably some poor life decisions in terms of going out and sort of making my mental health really bad at that point.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
yeah, I realized what I was doing and I withdrew from that course and moved home for a bit. And that
Mm,
takes me to where I studied for my whole course, which was Sheffield. So I studied illustration, the BA honours at Sheffield Hallam University.
mm,
It was a very, very enjoyable course. I started in 2016, graduated in 2019 with a
hmm.
first. I think I might have just said that, say it twice, got a first, might as well
Yeah, congrats.
celebrate
Yeah,
it.
you've got to.
Um, yeah, but I really loved the feel of Sheffield as a city. I instantly gravitated towards it in the sense that it's a lot more comfortable. It's a smaller scale, there's more green, there's more community, there's more
Mm,
pubs. And I'm not knocking Manchester for everyone. I'm just knocking Manchester for my personal preference on
yeah,
where I feel happy living.
yeah, of course.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I studied there and it was very enjoyable and I found it really, really like worthwhile. Um
Mm.
and yeah, I've got multiple reasons why, but shall I don't know whether to keep going on this question or
Yeah, I don't know.
move on.
I suppose maybe if we focus more on university as in the course, the illustration
Yeah.
course that you were doing, do you feel like it equipped you for the stuff you're doing now?
Yeah, so when I studied illustration, I really enjoyed the creative briefs. We are given a very varied sort of selection of briefs, which weren't just restricted to, as I said before, children's book illustrations. I mean, we did a bit of that, but it was basically showing us that you could do animation, creative build, you could do um, murals, signs. You could
Yeah.
teach art. You could do all these different things, printmaking, and
Mm-hmm.
loads of cool things. And the building itself was such a great hub in Sheffield. It was in an old post office
Oh,
where
wow.
they'd converted. So it was the old post office, so an old building with kind of
Mm-hmm.
like tiles and marble, well, not marble, but sort of tiled floors, and it had this
Yeah.
spiral staircase up the center of it.
Oh,
And
wow.
we
Sounds
were in
fantastic.
there. Yeah, it was so cool. We were in there with the jewelry and metalwork designers, the graphic designers, the
Mm,
textile designers, all these different creative courses were all in this post office hub. Um, and yeah, I was able to explore a lot more than just what I thought illustration would be by utilizing all the machines that were available and all the rooms that are
mm,
available across all those courses.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, university gave me a platform to basically just try everything, which is what they want you to do,
Mm,
and to not really have a specific voice yet, but to just like a money making voice, but to have like a just a creative voice. It was
mm-hmm.
definitely a place that I could do that. And I really enjoyed my time there. I think some people have different stories and different experiences, but that's the case with every single thing in life. But
Mm.
I really enjoyed it and I was very inspired by the course.
Good, good. And that's all I want to hear is just your perspective, because
Mm.
exactly everyone's going to have different opinions on it. And like you say, even for me, I really enjoyed my course. And I think it's like you say that you're only 18. Like, how are you going to know what you want to do with your life, And I think it's great that the course allows you to explore all those different alleyways and see where you really want to fit, or what alleyways you do want to explore, and you can sort of narrow it down a little bit more, and then when you graduate you sort of have a vague sort of direction, but you do have a direction that you are going into, and I suppose that direction just clarifies itself the more you keep working and the more you keep at it. But I
Mm.
guess that's just discovering who you are and your identity and a part of growing up as well, I suppose. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Fantastic. So, I suppose, so how was graduating for you? So, you've done this course for 3 years, you spent a wonderful time in Sheffield, and and then how did you sort of go from that graduating student into sort of quote unquote real world or the working
Yeah,
world?
yeah.
How did that look like for you, your sort of first steps into that?
Yeah, I was actually in a sort of friendship group that we all got on very, very well, and we decided to continue to rent a student house in the student area, but pay the
Mm,
council tax on it because one of the estate agents in Sheffield would allow that. So we kind of left the structure of university, but
mm.
kept the sort of un unbuckled structure of living in a student house.
Yeah.
So there was five or six of us. We all moved into this house and we did our first year post university together, stayed in the city, which is something that I would highly recommend you do, but it's more achievable in northern cities like probably Sheffield and for yourself Leeds,
Hmm.
because it's a bit more affordable for a room.
Yeah.
In London, it's just now I'm here. I had to work up to sharing in London, but
Mm,
in Sheffield, you could have a full-time or a part-time hospitality job, and you could afford a room's rent. So I actually got a job in a screen printing factory as a print operative, which sounds really, really creative, but it was actually very sort of, we did some arty things, but it was mainly corporate, sort of 1,000 bags for B&Q, where we would
mm.
just print the logo. And I wouldn't really be by hand either. We'd have so many automated machines that I'd be feeding things on and off. So
Right.
I was doing something cool that was making me money that was better for me than working in a cafe or somewhere like that.
Hmm.
But I was not as inspired as I thought I'd be. But it
Yeah.
does look good on the CV that you've been a print operative. Like,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I was doing that. I was doing that for to start with full time. Then I went down to I think 4 days a week because I was like, oh, I want to do. I was doing signs and posters and little bits
Mm,
and bobs. It was something was bubbling, and I basically reduced my hours And then I got about I think it was like 8 months later, I got
Hmm.
a huge commission to paint a shopping centre, which
Wow.
was like my breakthrough point.
Sounds quite
Yeah.
daunting as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was. I think that's something that can go into more detail about, but in terms of
Yeah.
the just graduating part, I think I had a smoother ride than some people because I had a good support system. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I basically did that, and I would urge people as like maybe an idea to start thinking about if they are students or they've got friends in a city or something like that, and they know they want to be creative. I think it's good to keep your friends close and all lean on each other and collaborate
Hmm.
and do like passion projects together. Like we had an Instagram account called Deca Collective, I think it was, because there was 10 people that were still in the city, so Deca
Ah.
10.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
we did fake briefs. So we would all pick a band name out of a hat and do a t-shirt design and then post it on Instagram. And that's
Oh,
all gone
cool.
now, but we're not a collective anymore. But at the time, it was really nice to still try and have a creative voice. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and keep on at it, I suppose.
Mm,
And I think that's, I suppose, one of the biggest difficulties is upon graduating, because at university you do have that hub, you've got that support network of tutors, of lecturers, of friends and colleagues and all that. And then when you graduate, some people, go back to their families or where they came from, or some people do decide to stay like you did. But I suppose it's sort of that scattering, and then that support network is suddenly gone. And I suppose
mm.
it's good that in your experience that all of you did stay and all of you did support each other, because I think it can be quite lonely, and as a creative person in general, and I suppose it's good to have somebody there to bounce ideas off of and just share that with them, and it makes the journey a bit easier as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think when not all of us are in touch still anymore, but at the time it was great. But yeah, when you start to try and do creative business ventures and things like that together, then it can test relationships. But I think while it was fun and we were young and we were like kind of making our rent from some people worked in cafes, some people worked in retail shops, some people like me worked in factories and all this stuff. And it was really good to just enjoy it for a bit before life
Hmm.
got too serious.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you.
Yeah.
We were talking about graduating and sort of entering sort of the working world. You working in the screen printing factory that you were there, and that sort of giving you a good start, really. And like you were saying, after graduating university and getting into sort of the working world, you were earning some money, allowed you to live and just carry on really in the company of your fellow, friends and alumni and people you stayed in touch with, and staying put in Sheffield for the meantime.
Yeah.
And suddenly there was a competition, right, for the
Yeah. Yeah.
Orchard Square mural. So why
Yeah.
don't you explain it all to us, and for everyone who doesn't know what that is or how it came about, to give us the whole rundown of what happened really.
Yeah. So Orchard Square is a shopping centre, just to sort of tell people about what it actually is. It's a shopping centre or a district in Sheffield city centre, and it's basically where TK Maxx and Costa and a few independent restaurants and things are. It's a kind of a square.
Yeah,
But
like
yeah,
a
it's in the
shopping.
city centre and it's somewhere that is sort of has a little bit of kind of cultural significance. It used to be a former not print works, a former steel works, like a lot of Sheffield history used to be, and it was a place that was looking for some investment and some kind of update in terms of how they are going to bring sort of young, new, and old, but new people into the space to use it as a cultural kind of hangout space. Or there's now a food hall that's been added on since I did the work there and all these things. But basically, it's this little corner of Sheffield that has sort of retail and food, and I think there might be like a shoe shop and a
Yeah, it's like
piercing
a
shop, and all these things. Yeah,
yeah, like a mini shopping centre. Yeah.
yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's very much it's yeah, most of it's outdoors, but it's kind of slightly covered, and it's this square that's surrounded by a
Mm.
brick facade, which is where I came into the process. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, I basically entered an open call for a public artwork project. It was commissioned by Sheffield Museums and a company called London Associated Properties, which I think they are like the overlying landlords, freeholder kind of owners. So some big investment was made to put out an open call to improve the space and make it a kind of more bright and colourful and exciting place to be.
Nice.
And I threw my hat in the ring in the selection process, in the application process, and luckily, or not even luckily, like it was a culmination of so many things, but I was actually awarded this commission, which was absolutely amazing. I was ecstatic. The budget was pretty big, but now I'm in my working world of murals, large scale murals. I realized actually it wasn't as big as it should have been or could have been,
Mm.
but it was massive for me at the time.
Yeah,
As
of
a
course.
graduate with kind of not far off minimum wage working, it was really, really exciting to have this opportunity and be sort of awarded this pot of money to transform a space. And
Mm.
yeah, it was extremely, extremely exciting.
Yeah.
Um,
So where did that idea really come from of, oh, I'm just going to apply for this competition. I don't know if I'll get it, but I'll give it a go. Was it that sort of thinking going on in
yeah.
your head for when you were applying for it, or did someone encourage you to apply?
So I was working a lot in the city centre, as I mentioned before, on little poster designs and sort of Posca chalkboards for cafes. And I think by that point, I'd done a little bit of arts education at the museums.
Mm.
So it was this perfect mix of everyone was saying, "Oh, look, there's this job coming up, this project." Like it was kind of shared on the feed of so many people that I knew
Mm.
that I was very excited to go for it. And I
Yeah.
think also they were looking for sort of new talent, new inspiration, new stories. They were looking for someone that they knew. And I think actually also I'd done a mural. I'd only done a couple of exterior murals on not a similar scale to this,
Mm.
but I'd done a couple of murals in Sheffield City Centre, exterior work, and I'd sort of shown the world that I could do it. But
Mm.
obviously, I didn't mention before, but the canvas itself it took 4 stories of scaffolding, and it was 100
Wow.
feet wide. I think it was about 30 foot by 100 foot,
Wow.
which is what I've been saying since the start, but I never properly measured it all. I used photographs to mock up, but I basically got this colossal artwork project, like in terms of
Yeah.
scale, but also responsibility and commitment and effort. And
No,
yeah,
of course.
basically, I think, as you said, did anyone suggest to do it? I think there were a few people. There was a guy called Matt who ran a co-working space in Sheffield, who supported me throughout a lot of my early career.
Mm.
He would give me poster designs and loyalty card designs, and actually did their sign writing on their store, on their
Oh.
co-working cafe. And I think it was people like Matt and also Graham from the museums and all these different people that I'd met before. I think they were all in a room or all on a board, and it just was the perfect culmination of everything that I'd started to work at. And yeah, I applied and then won the commission. So it was pretty pretty big.
Yeah, and pretty surreal moment really to get that. But I think that's an important point that you mentioned that you were doing little side projects also along the way, whether they were those illustrations for those chalkboards outside restaurants and cafes and bars, or like you say, mini illustration and mural projects, inside different establishments and things. And I suppose that was fantastic that you were already doing something out in the community as well. So you weren't sort of waiting, and creating your work, behind the scenes and nobody was seeing it. You were sort of active in that sense and sort of a go-getter and you were thinking, okay, how can I put myself out there? And I think that's such a great quality to have. And I think it's a thing that I suppose many young people might struggle with, really, is the sort of this self-promotion, And I
Mhm.
don't know whether it comes down to believing in yourself. I suppose it does. Believing
Yeah,
in yourself
completely.
or sort of um I suppose valuing what you do in a sense that, you have graduated, but that you are good enough to do these things and to put yourself out there and for, for example, a coffee shop to collaborate and work with you, that yes, you are good enough to for
Yeah.
your work to be out there and things. And I don't know whether that's just I don't know, part of the insecurity of artists and people, that may struggle with that and putting themselves out there. But you definitely seem to have that within you. And I think that's sort of a really good thing that's giving you that advantage. And I suppose it's wonderful that you had that supportive group of people as well that
Yeah.
supported you and said, yes, Will, you're going to go for it and you're going to be a great candidate for it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you touched on like not having the confidence or kind of the worth feeling the worthwhileness that's made up a
Yeah.
word, but to be a part of a creative community or to put work out. And I do think that that's something that so many creative people share, and I think it's something that you don't really ever get taught, or you can't even be taught. So if you
Mm,
do go through the creative process of taking a course somewhere, I don't think anyone's ever able to, in a lecture or in a kind of like slideshow, or give you a tutorial on how to kind of be feel worthy of your position and all this stuff.
mm,
So it is a battle that you do just have to try to join.
yeah.
You just have to get stuck into it. And I do also think that there's a whole addition to the business side of illustration or creativity, where it's actually so important to think like a business person
Mm,
just as much as the artist, and yeah, all of that. So that was something that I've always thought about. I think I've always thought about how a contract is going to be put in place and how I'm actually going to get paid for this and how much I'm going to charge. But
mm,
they're all questions that so many creative people never think about. And then they graduate with all this creative talent, but then they can't sort of utilize it because they're trapped in a world where they're just creating, but they're not monetizing it, and they're not
mm-hmm,
able to
mm-hmm.
put on this business hat and then put on the painting hat and all these things. Like
Yeah.
it's a tricky world, but
Yeah.
going right.
So moving back to sort of the Orchard Square that we touched on. So was that a moment when you really started considering your worth, like we were saying, and actually sort of that business side in a sense of the logistical side, I suppose, of actually putting all this together, how much it was going to cost, like pitching your idea to the actual organizers of this mural. Did you feel like you were jumping into the deep end, I suppose, with that
Yeah,
competition?
I think jumping into the deep end is a very, very good
Yeah.
saying for yeah, a saying for what I was getting myself into.
Mm,
I really didn't know exactly how or when and all these different
mm,
questions, but I still attended I remember a meeting in central London where the offices for the developers or the owners was. It was just off Carnaby Street, and I had quit my job because I knew how full on this was going to be, and the money was enough to just run a project for 4 weeks and then just see what happens.
oh wow.
And so I quit my job, and I remember going to London and thinking, this is pretty cool. Like I feel validated in the sense that I'm going to London from Sheffield. And
Yeah.
I remember going into these offices and being offered coffee and a biscuit, and I
Oh,
was like,
amazing.
this place is posh.
Yeah, I've
Um,
made it.
yeah, I've made it. I got free coffee. But yeah, I remember that meeting and having to sort of put on the shoes of someone that I wasn't just yet. So
Mm.
I I don't know I don't know how to say the word, but I
Mm-hmm.
bull whatever it is. I'm not going to say that word on your YouTube channel, but I faked it till I made it. But with all the experience and all the kind of courage and all the expectance that I would pull it off, but
Mm.
I said things like, "Oh yeah, I think it will take 2 working weeks, and I'll use spray cans." And I'd never used spray cans ever in my life before, and it ended up taking, yeah, a long. I don't actually know the full amount of time. I should work that out, but it was over the space of a series of months, and I started
Mm.
in the wrong season. I started in October or November,
Mm-hmm.
and
Rain.
I continued into the following year when the weather got better, and we did a second phase, which was actually an additional commission and all these things. But
Mm.
yeah, I definitely felt like I was starting to be validated by what I was deciding to do,
Mm-hmm.
and in that moment, I was basically just taking it all and trying to be sort of happy about it and trying to feel like, okay, this is what I'm doing, and I don't know what's next, but like let's give it a go. And I think that's always been a trait that I've had, where it is a kind of stressful world being a freelance creative, and you just
Mm.
have to have faith in what's to come.
Yeah. And that's a great sort of, I don't know, great idea to hold on
Mhm.
to.
Yeah.
I suppose a belief as well, like you say, in yourself and your abilities that, you might not know where work will come from next, but you know it will because your work is great and people want to work with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely it gets a lot easier, as I said. Like in the sixth year now, you build up all these not even repeat clients that directly hire you, but you have repeat people in your circle or in your world.
Mm.
And if you are quite extroverted when I'm out and about, but maybe introverted sometimes when I want to go to sleep and process my emotions. But I like to have communities and speak to people, and I definitely think that this community that I've amassed over the past 6 years has fed my creative business and kept me fed in terms of
Mm. Yeah.
paying my rent and buying food and all those things. But yeah, yeah, that's that point.
Great. That's good. Fantastic. Yeah. So you were pitching all these ideas, and I suppose you had no idea what to expect, so you didn't know if your pitch was sort of realistic in that sense. So what did those sort of people on the board think after you gave sort of your pitch to them? Did they tell you directly like, well, this is totally underestimating the size of the project, or but what was
No.
sort of their initial reaction?
No, so initially I was speaking to people that were more administrative in their roles.
Hmm.
So they just took every word that was coming out of my mouth for like, yeah, fact, cool. Yeah,
Oh
okay, we'll
wow.
pay the deposit and it will get done. And I had a lot to sort of prove.
Hmm.
So yeah, at the time it was very much cool. You've got this, you're experienced, you've been chosen for a reason, so go and do it. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think the design process, that was something that people got involved in,
Mm.
because it's a lot easier to say whether you like or dislike some art and give feedback in terms of, oh, can you change that icon and can you do this? But in
Yeah.
terms of the logistics of the project, it was something that I really just knew I could do, but didn't quite know how yet. And until I
Mm-hmm.
started it, I kind of didn't sort of mind that I didn't know. I just thought, right,
Yeah.
let's get the deposit in, let's work out how I'm going to get up there, whether it's a cherry picker or a scaffolding. So I
Mm.
actually did a license course. So I've got my iPath now, so I can operate cherry pickers. And then a couple of weeks later, when I went to hire a cherry picker, they said that that was not possible because we'd have to close off the whole square because of the footprint it would leave. And equally, there
Uh,
was a gradient, so you could have a spider lift that lifts up and
mm-hmm.
like doesn't mind being on a gradient,
Mm.
but it would block all the space for the opening for people. So
Oh,
I ended up
yeah.
having to get the whole shopping centre scaffolded, and then equally, I was really scared of heights as well at that point and all these
Oh.
things. So there were so many things that I kind of learned and mistakes, but it completely was a crash course into what I do now. And I just basically like whistle stop toured the whole process, just like shot through
Mm.
what some people take a long time to kind of work out.
Mm.
And I've kind of just kept running since. And it's
Yeah.
getting easier and it's getting more, what's the word? Consistent. It's
Yeah.
getting more consistent, and my skills are getting better, and my ability to quote and my ability to write a contract and all these things are so much better now.
Mm. Fantastic. But you know what's interesting is that, the fact that you're mentioning that you went and you did a course on how to use cherry pickers and things, but you didn't actually end up using it in that project. But
Yeah.
you actually since then probably have used it in other mural projects and things that you were doing. So in the
Yeah.
end, it actually worked out. That actually the things you learnt during that project, even if they weren't used right in that moment, were
Mm.
used later down the line. They were getting you ready for something that you would do
Yeah.
later on, which
Yeah, I
I
think
think is,
mistakes are so valuable.
mm,
Sorry, I've just jumped in.
go
But
for
I
it.
just wanted
Yeah.
to say, like, if anyone's listening or watching, like, the mistakes in life are so valuable because I feel like, as well at university, like, you don't want everyone to always say, oh, yeah, that's great. You want people to say constructively, hopefully, but you want to improve. So you can't improve without failing and learning, I don't think. So that's something that I think people should hold on to.
Yeah, great. Throw the perfectionist in the bin and bring in the person who likes to try things and fail and be happy whilst they're
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, that's the other struggle is not getting kind of like existential about failure. Like
Yeah.
just going, okay, that's a lesson. What's
Yeah.
next?
Yeah, fantastic. And that's sort of the mindset they had throughout that whole project, and it's what sort of kept you going, really. And I think
Yeah.
it's wonderful in a sense that the people there, they were okay with it. When you turned around and said, "Okay, I've underestimated this, it's gonna take a lot longer, and I'm changing plans, I'm trying something else. I'm not using spray cans anymore, I'm using paint," and
Yeah.
but everyone there was okay with it, in the end, and sort of it was nice that you didn't have that sort of pressure from the higher ups, in that sense, that they were sort of okay and were allowing you to make mistakes and they were supporting you as a early artist in that stage as well.
Yeah,
So
I
that,
think they had to take that into consideration because they chose to hire an early career artist.
mm,
So I think that it was all something that was expected anyway. Like, so no one's going to have a massive go at me about not doing something I should have done because they knew from the start that I wasn't the agency, and to be honest, I probably wasn't costing as much as the agency would have costed, but
mm,
um, I did what I could, and it worked out quite well.
yeah, I think it worked out fantastically.
Yeah,
Yeah, fantastic. So I suppose another thing I want to move on to is we've sort of touched on commissions and finding projects to work for, whether that is, creating your own set briefs and projects. Because, like you mentioned, it takes a while for things to get off the ground, if when you're trying to become a freelancer. And so, in the beginning, I suppose you were sort of self-initiating projects. You were approaching local businesses. You were seeing, do you need any illustrations doing? Do you need a design of a poster to promote an event? Do you need a menu designing? I can do that. So you were
Mhm.
sort of looking for self-initiated briefs in the beginning, and then applying for open calls as well. That was an important thing that allowed you to do that big sort of project that really started things off for you. So, what sort of happened after that project, and how did things look like from there? Did you sort of get more sort of interest in terms of paid work straight away, or was it still, sort of qu
Yeah.
quieter on the road, I suppose?
So immediately after I finished the projects, like within a week almost, we had the first COVID lockdown, which
Oh,
was, I'm not going to
yeah,
go into too much detail about that because everyone's tired about hearing about
yeah.
that. But it was such a scary time because I just quit my fairly kind of consistent and paid job. And I had no job, no furlough scheme, no anything. And I had to basically make the world work being this new artist, but with this huge challenge. And I'm sure everyone else had very, very difficult times during that time. But so immediately for me, COVID hit. So I was still living in the house with my friends. And luckily, I actually went onto universal credit, which is like state benefits. And I managed to get a small amount of money to keep myself going. But sorry about that. But I was very, very much kind of thrown in at another deep end.
Mm,
And I think it would have been very momentous and it would have been quite exciting. But it wasn't to be at that point. But
mm,
during that year as well, though, I entered the World Illustration Awards, which I'm going to toot my own trumpet, which is a worldwide kind of awards project, awards competition, which is hosted by the Association of Illustrators and the Directory of Illustration. And I put the Ultra Square project into this awards um, competition. And during the time when I was sort of out of work a little bit, I actually got shortlisted, and then social media did its magic, and I got longlisted, and then I attended the awards event through Zoom, which was kind of a letdown, but also it had to be. And I was awarded the professional site specific award for 2021. So I kind of got this huge award as well. Like I'd won a World Illustration Award for my project, but the world was still on lockdown. So
mm,
it, I did have worries that it wouldn't be kind of a go, and it wouldn't amass to anything. But
mhm.
luckily, Matt actually, the one from the co-working place, he came in and I designed a COVID compliance manual for his co-working space when they first started to open.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
I think I went and did some arts education projects with the V&A and Sheffield museums where I took school kids to London and then went to schools, and it all started to become something that really validated my position in the world. And I was
Mm,
definitely doing paid work enough to pay just like that. I think it was like £400 a month was my room rent at that time. So it didn't cost a lot. So I was just keeping churning through, and it's grown and it's got easier and easier, and I've specialized more now in illustration, signs, and mural painting. But
mm.
yeah,
Fantastic. I suppose it was a scary time for everybody, but even scarier as well for freelancers who, rely on work coming in and suddenly there was no work. And so
yeah,
I think
yeah,
again, it just shows the importance of those early connections, like you was mentioning, that they sort of were the things that lasted and they, turned back to you and they sort of kept you going and got you through that tough time as well. And so I
mm,
think that's just a testament to that. So fantastic. And we all got through
cool.
it. No, nobody liked those 2 years. We move on.
Yeah. God, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. So, sort of after that and doing all that, compliance manual that you created for your friend and things like that. So did it pick up from that point onwards, like 2022, would you say?
Yeah, yeah, I say things just began to started to become more consistent. And as I mentioned, I took on some sort of longer scheduled projects where I was almost part-time arts educator. So 2 days a week, I was doing a project where I was taking school trips and stuff, and
Mm,
other signage commissions and t-shirt designs for Henderson's Relish and bars, and things started to come in and people could see what I was doing, but I was keeping active and I was sharing the whole process on social media.
mm,
And at the time as well, when the world opened back up, I was attending a lot of community events, such as
mm,
Creative Mornings, there's one in Sheffield. But I was kind of starting to become part of the community, but being able to actually put my money where my mouth was and say, look, I'm doing this and it's paying for my life. So yeah, at the start it was quite difficult though to continue to push through, and to there were some months where I'd get really kind of low or I'd go into an overdraft and then have to catch up and all of that stuff. And it's only really taken me until end of 2025 into 2026 that I've now got some form of like buffer. But equally,
Mm-hmm.
like if my car blew up, then I'd be back to square one probably. So
Mm.
yeah, it's all these things that have taken a while to get
Yeah.
good.
But you've bounced back. You've bounced back,
Yeah.
which is the most important thing.
Mm.
Fantastic, fantastic. This is a good question. Do you have a sort of balance between your work life and your sort of private and home life, or do the two merge? Like, is there such a thing as a work-life balance, especially as a freelancer?
Yeah, I think being a freelance visual artist, as I am now, it always feels weird saying that out loud. It took me a while to kind of own that, but
Mm,
it definitely is something that you live and breathe. So finding the blend or like the kind of yeah, the crossing between these things is very, very difficult. But
don't
yeah,
worry.
finding the line between these things can be quite difficult.
Mm,
So I think it's something that your life is your work if this is what you do. So it's something that isn't a compromise. It's an addition. So culturally you enjoy going to the cinema and to gigs and to galleries and all these things, and it just feeds the creativity and the business and the life that you're living. But on the other hand, like relationships and family and all these things, like you need to make sure that you do have lines and boundaries when it comes to going on holiday or not working into the weekends. Because a lot of the time, because you are freelance and you work for yourself, you think I might as well make hay while the sun's shining and I might as well keep working. And oh no, I haven't finished a mural, so I'll do it into Saturday and maybe a bit of
mm,
Sunday. And then you do realize that actually relationships and life is very important to keep a sort of lid on. So
yeah,
luckily I've been doing quite well and I'm not too much of a workaholic or whatever they call it. But yeah, I think I'm kind of finding the balance and it's going okay.
good. So, were there moments when you were sort of burnt out and
Yeah,
there
yeah.
was none of
So
that creativity? And
yeah,
what did you do sort of to get you through those moments when you were just either tired or there was just the well was dry, there was nowhere to get this creativity coming from. So
yeah.
what sort of things that you did that sort of helped you through that?
So this is such a good question because it's something that I still deal with now in terms of I'll have things booked in and then I might just wake up and be like, I actually can't do this today. And like I've managed to get better at doing things, but like it's hard when it's creativity and money like are together. So you need to do this now because otherwise you can't pay the next bill or whatever. And in times of like that, I found that my environment is very, very important.
Hmm.
So I've recently moved into a new place, and I've got a different space that I work in to where I live and sleep and eat and all these things. So I've managed to get to the point where I can have a studio, which before I was renting shared accommodation where my desk would be at the end of the bed, and there wasn't really a line between living, working, sleeping, eating. I mean, the toilet was somewhere else, but um, I wasn't really kind of able to split these things apart, and I think that that's something that I've really, really benefited from recently, and it's got a lot easier since I've got a studio. Well, it is a studio. I've got a little
Hmm.
loft that I'm in now, and it's my space to kind of run this business.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's super important to have a space that is your own and it's dedicated to what you do, your work, your creativity, and you can it's a sort of a physical separation, you're not working out of your bedroom where you sleep, you're working out of your office that's dedicated to this creativity. So when you walk in, your mind is like, okay, I'm walking into the creative zone. And so
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sort of prepares you sort of mentally, I suppose, which is a good
yeah.
thing to have.
I think it's
Yeah.
not attainable though straight away. So I do think that yeah, and maybe another thing I did was a bit of therapy post uni that
Yeah.
helped me kind of ground myself and work out like how to deal with kind of like overloading and burnout and
Mm.
like processing your own emotions and all these things.
Yeah.
Because basically, I don't want to just say, oh yeah, get a studio because immediately post university, you can barely afford the room with your desk in, let alone a studio as well. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think it's finding a balance between working really hard, not beating yourself up for taking time to reset. And I've learned that I need like, I don't know, like maybe one day every 2 weeks, where I over anticipate the length project's going to take because I know that there'll be a day or two where I just can't do it. But if I'm on site, I'm painting, I will be there every day because I'm accountable to someone else. But when it comes to designing things and it's my own accountability to climbing up that ladder and doing it, I know that it takes a little bit longer than I anticipate to basically sign off things and to get the creative designs out and all these things.
Mm. Yeah. And I think it's important to factor in the time for, your own rest in between. You're not
Yeah.
working at 100% all the time throughout the whole of the project from beginning to end. And I think that's the thing that I think all of us would forget, really. We forget ourselves, factor in our own humanity, and we do get tired, and we do
Mm,
need that recuperation time in the middle of specifically if it's a, long-lasting project, it takes a couple of months, and
yeah.
so it's like a marathon, not a sprint in that
Yeah,
sense,
yeah.
isn't it?
The first
Yeah.
summer, sort of post Orchard Square, post COVID, and all these things was the one that I learned that lesson, like with almost burning qualities, like because it just destroyed me. I was booking the projects in thinking, okay, how long does it take to paint? But I wasn't thinking about the mental struggles it takes to design something. So I was actually booked out painting, 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 and then I was like, oh God, the next project is booked in to start painting the following week. So I got to this point where I was painting all day and then designing for 2 or 3 hours in my room and then sleeping. But some nights I'd just fall asleep in the clothes, in the paint clothes I was wearing and go to work straight away the next day. And it really does affect you. But at the time, because you're striving for this creative business to run and to work, you kind of feed this monster and you just keep going. But it's with reflection that you look back and think, oh my God, like that was too much. And maybe I need to charge more and take a bit more time. Like, don't be the cheapest and don't be the quickest. Like, try your
Mm,
hardest to be paid what you're worth, um, and take the time you need, but not
mm.
too long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's great. And I think that comes with time, like you say, making the mistakes, on the job, living through it. And, you learn as you live, or you live as you learn, I
yeah, yeah,
guess.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
So we've been talking about graduating from uni, about your first sort of big, daunting mural project, the ups and downs of COVID hitting straight after that, and trying to make it as a freelancer, as well as trying to find sort of a balance between working and living and the difficulties that lie with that sometimes. And so, where are you at currently? Now, in 2025, in January, no, we're in February now, in February.
Yeah, February.
And so, where are you at now? Are there any exciting things you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, so things are going quite well. I found a new way of working as a freelance creative. So I've basically been working within agencies doing more creative build and carpentry and painting and stuff like that.
Oh,
So I've been doing freelance shifts with multiple mural painting agencies, a company called Build Hollywood, which is a street advertising company. I install and de-rig street 3D street signage and things, which I don't post
oh,
anything about. I'm also working a little bit with the retail company Next, and I'm in their photo studio building bits of sets. And then alongside all of that, which is behind the scenes, I'm posting things on social media and working on projects. And yeah, been painting a mixture of signage and mural work. I've been recently painting a sign for a Korean restaurant in Stoke Newington in London, and I've got two murals locked in, one for a bubble tea restaurant and one for a building development office in
Oh.
Surrey. So yeah, I'm working on these two varying projects. And then I've got a few conversations happening at the minute and some other projects. And one that's quite sensitive in terms of being able to share exactly what I'm doing and when I'm doing it and stuff, which
Hmm.
just adds to the excitement. So
Yeah, the
I'll
mystery.
I'll speak to the client and we'll see. But it's yeah, it's a location that requires me to be go through a body scanner to access, which
Oh.
sounds mad,
Oh,
but
very high
yeah,
tech.
I'm gonna like leave this little bit of
Mystery.
mystery with the
Fantastic.
listener so they could follow along and maybe see it or maybe not see it. We'll
Definitely.
see.
Yes, everybody go
Yeah.
follow Will, see what he'll be up to. You
Yeah,
you
at
don't want to miss it.
willustration.
Yeah.
Yeah, link below.
Yes, definitely. We'll link everything in there for
Perfect.
sure. Fantastic. So great. I'm so happy things are much better than they were during COVID, which I think a
Yeah,
lot
for
of
sure,
people
for
can say
sure.
the same. Fantastic. Great. And so how did those things sort of come about? Were you sort of approaching those agencies, or did the agencies approach you, or was it a mix of both?
Yeah, so as I said, I lived in Sheffield for I think it was 4 or 5 years post graduation, and I made it work in a northern city with a smaller pool of projects. And I always thought that potentially London could be an opportunity that I could do. But to start with, I kind of held this thought that it was too much and it was like gonna be a mistake to kind of leave the friendships and community that I've got. But that was also part of the decision in the sense that the friendships and the community and the safe feeling was maybe a little bit too safe because I became a little bit stagnated in terms of projects. I was doing lots of arts education, the odd sign, the odd mural, but I started to become more of an arts educator than a visual artist. So yeah, I moved to London in January of 2024, and I moved into a warehouse, a converted warehouse in Finsbury Park in Manor House, um, which I thought would be full of all artists and musicians, but actually I was living with a tree surgeon and a therapist and a
Oh, wow.
French script writer slash French translation speaker, all this stuff. So it was a really
Oh.
odd place, but it was a very unconventional place, but conventional for what I was doing. So creative, rolling monthly rent and shared, so it wasn't too expensive. But yeah, I moved to London January 2024, paid upfront for 1 month, subletted a room, and then I managed to find a unit 2 doors down in the same complex, and I stayed there for the full year. And then very recently, I've just moved out of London slightly to somewhere which I'm not going to disclose, but it's 40 minutes from London. And yeah, I realized that being in London was a very, very good decision for me because all of the workshops, the agencies, the beating heart of what I'm doing kind of is in London. And I you can make it work, and I did make it work, and I could have made it work forever, but I just wanted a piece of this. So yeah, the
Yeah.
agencies have sometimes been contacting me through recommendations, but other times I've found carpentry and install jobs on LinkedIn. I've emailed my portfolio out. I've gone to creative events and met the right person at the right time. So it's a huge mix of all of that. But it's a lot easier in London if you have a very go-getting attitude because there's so many things that you can grasp at. So I've been waving all like not actually waving, but I've been saying hello, I'm here to a lot of people kind of hypothetically, and it's paying off because I've got the portfolio to back it up. And once you do a few things, it snowballs. So it's going well, but you never know.
No, I'm
We'll
sure
see.
it will keep on going well.
Yeah,
I
hopefully,
think we've got to
hopefully.
think optimistically, don't we? We can't be
Yeah,
all doom
always,
and
always.
gloom all the time.
Yeah,
If
there's
it's
a
going well,
guy.
just savor the moment, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an artist called Super Mundane, and I remember he did a print that said always forwards. I think he did the in the Leeds train station. He did the artwork, the big mural
Ah, yes,
on
he
the
did.
window. Yeah,
Yes,
and he
yes,
I think
yes.
had a piece of artwork which said always forwards, and I thought that was quite a nice like thing to think about. Like
Yeah,
no matter what, it's always going forwards. Like your past
exactly.
is your past, and you can work on it and you can improve.
Fantastic, fantastic. And, as well, the London thing, I think that's also a big thing that a lot of people consider, oh, should I move to London? It's the capital of everything, more
Mhm.
jobs, more opportunities, and whether that is still true, even though that it is expensive, but it is doable, and you've proved it's
Mm.
doable. And in like you say, it's worked for you, I suppose. So I suppose everyone needs to gauge whether that's something that might benefit them or not.
Yeah, exactly that. I wouldn't say that it's a quick fix to becoming a successful creative person because actually it's a quick way at really getting yourself underwater.
Mm,
I sort of calculated it, if that's the right way of saying it, in terms of I'd got the clients and I'd already been going into London to work with agencies as a freelancer, painting murals and things as like a laborer.
mm,
So I was doing things that were kind of hinting at the fact that I could make it work.
mm,
I would not recommend at all anyone just packing their bags and dumping themselves in London and expecting the world to be kind to them. Because there are a lot of kind people out there, but it also can be quite a difficult one and quite an expensive one and all of that. So if you can get through your creative career and you say, oh, you are Northern like I was and you are and all these things, and you do want to give London a go, I would stay for at least, I mean, I did I think it was 4 or 5 years, but I would try and establish something before you turn up.
mm.
But some
Yeah.
people could just turn up and make it work if they've got the drive. But um, yeah, people
Yeah.
wouldn't advise to just go for it.
No, definitely not. Yeah, you definitely have to put some consideration to it, the pros and cons, and nothing's guaranteed at the end of the day. Even if you do move, nothing might
Yeah,
change for you. So, but like you say, your situation was a bit different in the sense that things were already pulling you in that direction. You were
yeah.
working with people from there already. You were traveling in to London
Mhm.
to work. And so sort of things were already pulling you there. So it
Yeah.
seemed to make sense to uproot and move there too.
Yeah, and I would
Yeah.
recommend subletting it. It happens all the time in London because there's young people in like below 30 all live in shared living for a long time because of
Mm.
London, the cost of it.
Yeah, of
So
course.
a lot of the time people go away for a month and they can't afford to go away and pay rent, so they sublet their room, which is how I
Mm.
got into London. So you can look on
Great.
spareroom.com, it's a website, and you could find a 30-day policy for a certain figure that you know you can afford, and maybe you could just give it a go, which is
Mm.
what I did. So,
Good.
um, yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't move full time. I wouldn't sign a 12-month contract if I
No.
was a fresh creative
No,
moving
definitely not. Test
moving
the
in.
waters. Test the waters
Yeah, yeah,
first. Definitely. Definitely. Fantastic. So I suppose we touched upon Super Mundane, the illustrator. But I suppose who inspires you? And is there anyone in particular that inspires you now, or maybe someone from the past that had a
yeah.
big influence on you? Who's sort of your inspiration?
So immediately, I would say there's an artist called George Law or Geo Law online, or in the world. That's his name, George Law, Geo Law. But he allowed me. He was based in Sheffield, then moved to London, and I interned with him while I was in a summer at university. And he was doing Posca murals for Trust. No, not Trustpilot. I worked for Trustpilot recently. Sorry, flex that one. It was yeah, like Facebook, TikTok, like all these Canva. He was doing these crazy murals for these really cool clients,
Mm,
and he was a big inspiration in showing me that it's possible and to keep trying and to all these things. And in terms of someone who's not alive anymore, I'd say Keith Haring, the New York kind of character illustrator. The sense that they were community like placed in terms of they weren't just putting art out, they were part of like friends of Andy Warhol and Basquiat and all these people. Like they had this
Mm,
creative bubble that they lived and breathed, and then he became the one of the world's biggest fine artists. But that's pretty inspiring. And then
mm,
someone in our day would be an artist called Kelly Anna. She is a mural artist who she did like the branding for the lionesses, like so she does these really gestural, colorful, similar to me, like block color murals.
mm.
And her ethos and the way that she works and the way she posts is very inspiring. So yeah, Geo Law, Keith Haring, and Kelly Anna are people that I think people should have a look at, and they're people that
Fantastic.
I think have inspired me.
Yeah, and we'll definitely link those below because I want to have a look
Yeah,
myself as well. Yeah,
yeah,
fantastic, fantastic. But now that you mentioned Keith Haring, I see sort of the similarity, the strong colours, strong shapes, you know. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
definitely, definitely. But definitely I think
yeah.
everyone has their own style. But I think it's
Hmm.
good for people to hear, you know, who your inspiration is because maybe someone's uninspired at the moment or going through art block or, things
Yeah,
like that. So
yeah.
it might help them to, boost some ideas or some creative thinking by having a look as well. So that's always
Cool.
good. We'll wrap up by asking you this question. So, what are sort of three tips that you wish you would have heard when you were sort of starting out on your journey? If you could sort of go back in time and tell younger Will three things,
Yeah.
what would you tell him?
Okay, the first thing that I would tell my younger self would be to think like a business. I mentioned it before,
Mm,
but I'm not going to give a lecture on how to write a contract and how to make sure that you are paid enough and make sure that you don't get stuck in a feedback and amendment war with someone. But a contract is the first step in every single commission for me, which outlines what I'm going to give and what I'm not going to give. So yeah, thinking like a business. There are books. I think there's one called How to Be an Illustrator that has information in it. All these different places. The Association of Illustrators is another place you can go. But legal side of illustration and creative projects, insurance, tax, all this stuff. Start thinking about it while you're still at uni because immediately you'll need it. Um, then secondly, I would say overestimate is it over or underestimate how long? Overestimate how long
over.
something's going to take. Over. Yeah. So give yourself some extra days. So as we mentioned before as well, like some days you will just not be capable or not want to, but it's weird. It's like something that you have to pay your rent with. So as I said, you have to do it, but give yourself a couple of days leeway with a project to just make sure that you can do it smoothly and you can enjoy the process. And finally, I would say point three is be sociable. Use your voice to meet new people. So attend as many creative events as possible. Join clubs, join forums, join Instagram competitions, and I don't know, like Inktober and all these things. Like use your voice to find community and make friends, basically. Like,
Yeah,
because if you have lots of friends, then in life's just a little bit easier. Yeah,
definitely.
I think
Yeah.
they're my three.
Fantastic. And they're a great trio, definitely. Super important. And I think it's great. I've learned a lot myself listening to you and listening to your wisdom. And I really hope that,
Wisdom.
people will listen to this and get something out of it for themselves as well and be inspired on their journeys and learn
Yeah.
from what you've learned as well. And I think it's
Hmm.
like you say, really important to have that community and to listen to others and to support each other. And
Yeah,
so
for
thank you
sure.
very much for coming onto my channel today
All
and
right, it's
having
my
this chat
pleasure.
with me. It's my
Yeah.
pleasure as well. And I
Okay,
hope
cool.
I hope I hope that everything goes well for you and it keeps going well. You seem to be
Yeah,
doing a
you
great
too.
job. And
Yeah,
so, where
cool.
can people find you? Last thing, where can people
Yeah,
find you? Where can we follow you?
yeah.
Where can we commission
So
you?
Yeah, so my Instagram, which is where I'm most active, is at willustration. So the word illustration with a W at the start, with an underscore at the end because it was taken.
Mm.
But then recently I've just started a TikTok, which is just the word willustration.
Hmm.
And my website is www.willustration.co.uk. And people can inquire, find my email, and actually, yeah, find my details through that. So, yeah, if you just
Fantastic.
Google the word willustration, I'm sure things will come up. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Great.
that's been
So we'll
great.
link all that down in the description for anyone interested. And
Thank you very
fantastic.
much.
Thank you again, Will, for coming on. And thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode. Might be a bit of a longer one, but I think it's well worth listening to the end.
Yeah,
And thank you very much. And we'll see everyone in the next episode. So thank
cheers.
you.
Right, thank you. Have a
Thanks,
good
Will.
night. See ya.